Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
This is podcast number 4.
All right, so this is what I wanted to talk about. Heaven is what I want to talk about, but so I've heard heaven is going to be on earth, but everything you read says that I know of so far is the heaven is above the firmament. So, I don't know. I was asking someone about it the other day, and they said, yeah, heaven is going to be on earth.
In Revelation, when Jesus comes back, he sets up his throne on earth for 1,000 years. So,
okay, yeah.
And during that time, the devil's chained to the bottomless pit. For that 1,000 years, he's not able to roam free across the earth like he had been. So it'll be basically 1,000 years of peace. But Jesus, he sets up his reign on this earth, but it doesn't mean that everybody's basically under his reign, because he releases the devil from the pit after 1,000 years, and the devil goes around to other nations, I guess, and recruits them for another battle against Jesus. So, in my opinion, he sets up heaven on earth, but I think heaven is just going to be the area where all the Christians are, / Israel. And by Israel, I don't mean that little tiny section of Israel that we know Israel as today, as that little tiny country. The land that God promised Israel back in the time of Abraham was literally all the way over to almost Egypt, spreading the land out through all these other countries now that are around them that are truly a part of the promised land. So I think that the nation that God sets up is going to be a rather large area. Plus, it's got to be able to fit all the Christians that are staying in that area. But
I've never heard that. That is so interesting.
Well, it's definitely a confusing thing. And then, of course, I'll take you back to that verse that says, one day is like 1,000 years to God. So does that mean his heavenly kingdom is set up for one day, or is it literally 1,000 years? I always try to take it literally, though, as being an actual 1,000 years. But, yeah, it'll be definitely an exciting time. And it's just weird to think about heaven on earth. You know, it's weird. But
so are you saying that after the 1,000 year, right, this is going to be a different heaven? We're going to then go up?
After the 1,000 years, the devil, is released and gathers all the armies up, and they come, and Jesus wipes them all out again, and then we will be transformed into our heavenly bodies, and then taken up into heaven, and there will be no more earth.
What do you think heavenly bodies will look like?
Well, from my personal vision that I had, when I felt Jesus come to me, the most beautiful blue color that you've ever seen, like emerald blue, like the sun dancing off of the most beautiful tropical blue water you've ever seen. And when I had my vision, it was still in kind of a human shape, but you could definitely tell it was a spiritual being. And I told you I was so overwhelmed that I could not look up, but I sat there at the feet of Jesus, weeping and talking to him.
Mr. Cat.
Bird, what are you doing? You're a crazy cat. Yeah, for the people listening, the bird lady, the cat, was hanging from a blanket from the ceiling, swinging. But no, I had that where I was communicating and everything, and just felt overwhelmed. But all I can tell you is that it was the most beautiful blue color I've ever seen in my life.
Well, you couldn't look up at Jesus or God and see his
I wanted
face
to.
because no one can, right?
No, you can't. You can see Jesus's face. You just can't see God's face.
Right. So that's what I want to ask you
Yahweh's
about.
face.
Yeah. So like in the Old Testament, when people are talking about walking with God, how the heck they walk with God if they can't see his face?
Yeah, that's a that's a tough one, because it even says in a few verses that make you think that the actual person like Moses or whoever looked into the eyes of God or looked into the face of God, but when they came out of the presence of God, they were always glowing with this intense glow. And a lot of people said that glowing was coming off of their eyes from looking at the intense light. So I try to take it as the average person that's not chosen by God cannot see the face of God without dying. But I feel like if you're chosen, that there's a possibility, because Enoch,
365 years.
Enoch said though that when he was in heaven that he couldn't look at the face of God.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. So, but he knew
I
it
mean,
was
for
God.
365 years, that's a lot of days.
But yeah, it's always a tough one. But Enoch's descriptions of heaven, which eventually I'm gonna try to read some from, but are very amazing. If you've never listened to them, the descriptions of the him walking up to the throne of God and what the throne of God looks like, and very intense fear from Enoch, because he could literally look up and see what he called the heavens, the map of the heavens. He's walking on crystal clear glass, like literal crystal, and there are crazy looking angels all around him, and there's flames pouring out of the walls, different places that he had to walk through to go to the next area. He'd have to walk through fire. So it was a very fearful thing for him. And we don't picture fire in heaven like that, you know? But in his description, there's fire in heaven. But he wasn't burned by it. But it still had that scary feel to him because he had to walk through it. But, and the depictions of angels are insane. You know, having like 4 different faces and all kinds of stuff.
That's what I was wondering, what heavenly bodies are going to be like. Are we going to be something like an angel that are, you know?
I think that we'll still have somewhat of a human shape to us, but we'll be in a spiritual form, you know? And I think that if anything, you'll look like you did at your best in your life. So when I picture...
So everyone's going to be 16 again?
I don't know if 16, you know, but like, I would say your version of like a 20, how you looked at 20, you know?
Or you lost a lot of weight when you were 80.
But you're not going to like go up there and I don't think see your grandpa and him still look like an old man. You know what I mean? So...
It's interesting. Kind of weird to think about.
A lot of people say that one of the first people that they're greeted by when they died was a loved one. But I've also heard that in some cases it was peaceful, and then other times they were met by a loved one and thought it was a loved one, but it was really a demon impersonating one of their loved ones, and they were really on their way to hell. And it was like the first thing that a demon wanted to do was to make you think that you were headed to heaven first, so that you could wind up in hell, you know?
That is something he would do.
People say that and a lot of times they've seen their pets in heaven. One guy said that he saw every pet that he had ever had, and they were at their best too. And they were, even though, let's say, the cat and the dog hated each other in real life, they were friends up there, you know, in heaven. My other two buddies, I had two friends that have actually died. One of them was caught up into the clouds and had a conversation with Jesus, and Jesus told him his time wasn't there yet.
Did he see his face?
He did, but he also says that over time, just like anything, it starts to fade. The memories do of what you saw. Even my experience, the memories start to fade. But
that's why I wrote mine down.
Yeah, which is smart. I wish that I would have now, but I kept thinking in my head the experience was so crazy I could never forget it, and I can't. But slowly, the details of exactly how everything looked start to fade. So my other buddy, who died in the hospital, he was caught up, but as he was seeing his life and what he did when he was younger flash before his eyes, he was moved through the sky, through the nation of Israel, and saw everywhere where Jesus went. Then he was caught up into heaven, walked through like a corridor with pillars on the sides, and he didn't even know how to describe it because he's not a very educated person, so I had to like pick a few words out for him, but he's like, yeah, like a pillar. Yeah.
What do you do for me, bro?
Yeah. And he kept walking and came up on what he described to me, made me think that it was the throne of God. And Jesus was on the right hand of God on his throne. And then he said he was caught up. How did he say it?
You know, I did picture God as like a giant. Like, that's literally what I think of, like a giant. So when he's sitting on the right hand, I just feel like
I always see him as
Jesus is little, and then God is a giant.
I kind of see it like that sometimes as well. But he said he was then moved to what he called the field of flowers, and he said it was just this giant field of flowers. He saw the field of flowers, and he said that it wasn't like just a flower here or a flower there. The whole field was decked out in crazy flowers.
There was no grass blades.
Just flowers. And then he said he looked up in the trees, and instead of the trees having, normal green leaves or whatever coming off, it was all flowers coming off the trees too. And you could tell when he was telling the story that it was real, because when I was making him go back in his head and relive the memories, look on his face was like I was literally bringing back heaven when he was thinking about it, like he went somewhere else. And it made me realize that what he was saying was true. But then he eventually appeared before Jesus, and Jesus told him it wasn't his time either. And then he went back to his body. And he was dead for I want to say over a minute or two. And my other buddy was dead for like a minute or two before they revived him.
That's crazy.